Now that you have a grasp on supply and demand and how they work together to set equilibrium, which creates the price for goods and services, and how price responds to shortages and surpluses, the next kind of core concept in economics is competition. Now, next to private property and supply and demand, competition is the key component to a market economy or capitalism as compared to a command economy or communism. Now, there's several benefits to competition. Uh, First, it's through competition that we as consumers get a larger selection of goods and services. Competition is also what keeps prices low or as low as the market is going to allow them to be. It also improves the quality of goods and services. When you're given a choice between a flip phone and a smartphone, you're always going to choose the smartphone because you're going to want the better quality product. And so producers and sellers are going to work to give you the highest quality merchandise possible. And finally, competition produces or drives producers and sellers to create and invent new and improved products. You know, PlayStation 1 gives way to PlayStation 2, PlayStation 2 gives way to PlayStation 3, 3 to 4, so forth and so on. Now, there are many different types of competition. We're only going to talk about one today, which is perfect competition. Perfect competition is kind of the ideal form of competition. This is what Adam Smith and David Ricardo talked about in the 1800s. This is like classical economics. It has four characteristics in perfect competition. First, there are many buyers and sellers. We're going to talk about monopolies in a second. Monopolies don't exist in perfect competition. Okay? You need to know these four characteristics. All the firms have identical goods. Okay? This means everybody sells the same product, everybody's buying the same products. We're talking about everybody selling like apples. There's no real difference between one apple and another apple. It's just an apple. Third is you have informed buyers and sellers. Everybody knows what they're buying when they buy it, and everybody knows what they're selling when they're selling it. And finally, there's easy entry and easy exit from the market. That means you can become a producer and start selling a good very easily, and you can also leave the market very easily. We'll talk about barriers in a little bit. Now, in perfect competition, sellers end up being price takers, which means that supply and demand set the price for the products that they're going to sell. The sellers don't really have much of a say in how much they're going to sell the product for. However, this isn't true in imperfect competition. In imperfect competition, sellers can be price searchers. They can search out higher prices, like niche markets where they can sell their goods and services for a little bit more. The perfect example is gas. If you're in the city, you have millions of people around, everybody drives, and everybody needs gas. The demand is really high. You can charge a little bit more for gas. However, if you're in the country and you're in a town of 500 people, well, you're not going to be able to sell gas for quite as much as if you were in the city because demand isn't as high. So the market will push the price down. That's what it means to be a price searcher, is that they can find those niche markets where they can sell things for a little bit more money. Now, in perfect competition, there are many sellers, and so sellers end up being price takers. However, monopolies do form, and they form in a couple different ways, which we'll get to in a second. But first, we need to look at what are the characteristics of a monopoly. So first, there's only one place you can get this product from. There's a single seller. That's the only spot you go to. You have no other choices. Second is that there are no good substitutes. A substitute, if you remember, is something that could replace the thing you're trying to buy. So the reason PlayStation isn't a monopoly is because there's Xbox. You can only buy PlayStation from Sony, but Xbox is a really close substitute. And so if PlayStation starts charging way too much money or non-competitive prices, you could always just go buy an Xbox and it's close enough. It's a close enough substitute. And finally, that there are really high barriers to entry. That means it's really difficult to start up a company to compete with a monopoly. Now, like I said, there are a couple different ways companies can become monopolies. The first one we're going to talk about is a trust. And a trust is a combination of companies that come together to act as monopoly. So if Microsoft and, sticking with our gaming example here, if Microsoft and Sony come together and they can drive up the price of gaming consoles together if they want to. But if they did that, that would make them a trust, which gives them monopolistic control on a market. So people have invented antitrust laws. These laws are designed to control monopolies and to preserve and promote competition. Since competition lowers price and it does all these great things for consumers, we want to keep competition as much as we possibly can. Another way to become a monopoly is by a merger. This is where one company buys more than half or more of another company and begins to control them. If they start controlling them, they can act as one company and kind of control the market for whatever good or service they're offering. The Sherman Act in the 1890s made it illegal for businesses to try to create monopolies or to act in restraint of trade. Acting in restraint of trade is like a fancy way of saying getting further and further away from perfect competition. And finally, there is such a thing as a natural monopoly. Natural monopolies form when producers start competing over a new product or a new market, and there ends up becoming only one sole survivor. And so electric is a great example, natural gas. If you look at like my utility bills, the only place I can buy electric from is the place I buy electric from. The only place I can get gas from is where I get gas. I can only get one. There's only one place I can get water from. And so to combat this, the government has created the Public Utilities Commission that kind of regulates these natural monopolies in two ways. They regulate price and they regulate profits. This limits the ability of these markets to demand monopolistic prices, which is drive up prices to increase their profits.